The alien queen called it a punishment. Then every woman in the unit wanted the human. The airlock door slammed shut behind me before I even understood what was happening. Red light flooded the narrow chamber. A voice, deep and cold, spoke through the ship speakers in broken words that were not made for a human throat to answer back. You are the punishment. I did not know what that meant. I did not have time to ask. The floor beneath me shook, and through the small window in front of me, I saw 11 tall women standing in formation, silver skin catching the light, eyes glowing gold like they were watching a fire burn. They were not human. They were something stronger, taller, and far more dangerous than anything I had trained for. My name is Daniel Hart. 3 days earlier, I was a maintenance technician on a supply station near the edge of known space, fixing broken air filters and eating cold food from a can. Now I stood inside a warship that belonged to a species called the Vectari, sent here as punishment for a unit that had failed some kind of test I knew nothing about. The airlock door opened. The tall woman standing at the front stepped forward. Her voice was sharp, and every word landed like a blade. I am Marshal Vren. You were sent here because my unit shamed themselves in front of the High Council. Now they must carry the weight of a human. You will cook. You will clean. You will remind them every day what failure looks like. I wanted to argue, but before I could speak, the ship shook again. This time it was not words causing the movement. It was an attack. Alarms screamed through every hallway. Red lights turned to flashing white. Marshal Vren turned her head sharply toward the ceiling, listening to something only her enhanced hearing could catch. Raiders, she said. Small ships fast. They are trying to breach the cargo bay. The 11 women moved instantly, each one running toward their stations without a single wasted second. I stood frozen for half a heartbeat before one of them, a woman with quick eyes and short dark hair, grabbed my arm and pulled me along. Move, human, unless you want to die standing still. Her name, I would learn later, was Priya Solanki, though at that moment she was only a blur of motion and urgency. We ran through metal corridors that curved and dropped in ways that made my stomach twist. The ship was massive, built for war, every wall lined with pipes and wires that hummed with power. We reached the cargo bay just as the outer wall tore open. Sparks flew across the room. Cold air rushed in from outside, carrying with it 3 armored figures who dropped through the gap with weapons raised. Priya did not hesitate. She moved faster than my eyes could follow, striking the first raider before he could aim his weapon. The second one turned toward me, and for one terrifying second I thought this would be the end of my very short time on this ship. Then something inside me reacted. Years of technical training, years of understanding how machines worked, gave me an idea. I grabbed a loose pipe from the broken wall and threw it directly into the raider's weapon, just as he pulled the trigger. The weapon sparked and jammed in his hands. He looked down, confused, giving Priya the half-second she needed to finish the fight. The third raider tried to run, but another woman, tall and calm, stepped into his path and ended the threat without a single wasted movement. Her name was Fatima Okoro, and she barely looked tired even after the fight was over. The cargo bay went silent, except for the sound of alarms slowly fading. Marshal Vren arrived moments later, stepping over broken metal with a face that showed no emotion. She looked at me for a long moment, then she looked at the jammed weapon still smoking on the floor. You did that, she said. Not a question. I nodded, still catching my breath. Interesting, she said, and walked away without another word. That night, if you could call it night, on a ship that never saw a sun, the 11 women gathered in the mess hall. I stood near the kitchen area, unsure if I was allowed to sit with them or not. Priya solved that problem by pulling out a chair and pointing at it until I sat down. You fixed the gate seals yesterday, she said. The ones nobody complained about, because everyone thought they were supposed to feel that stiff. I shrugged. It was a small job. The metal was aging, and the pressure valve was set too tight. You did it without being asked, said Fatima. That is not a small thing here. I did not know what to say, so I said nothing. Over the next few days, the ship settled into a routine, but the tension never fully disappeared. We were moving through a region of space known for pirate activity, and every silent hour felt like it was waiting to be broken by another alarm. I spent my mornings fixing broken systems, my afternoons learning how their weapons and shields worked, and my evenings cooking meals using spices I had brought from home, spices their systems had never processed before. The first time I made a spiced protein dish, the reaction in the room was almost funny. Eyes widened, mouths opened slightly. One woman, named Elena Voss, closed her eyes like she was trying to memorize the taste. Even Marshal Vren, who ate her food standing near the doorway, paused mid-bite before continuing without a word. It was not just the food. It was the way I noticed things. I noticed when someone's armor joint stuck slightly during training. I noticed when a woman named Grace Adeyemi flinched from an old injury that no one else had caught. I noticed when Priya went quiet after long shifts, carrying something heavier than exhaustion. I did not know it yet, but noticing people was becoming its own kind of danger. 2 weeks into the journey, the ship received a distress signal from a nearby mining station. Marshal Vren gathered the unit for a briefing, and for the first time, she allowed me to stand inside the room instead of waiting outside. "The station reports an unknown vessel approaching," she said. "The signal cut off shortly after. We go in fast, we go in ready, and we do not assume anything is safe." The plan was simple on paper: land near the station, secure the perimeter, evacuate any survivors, and identify the threat. Nothing about war ever stays simple once it begins. We landed in the shadow of a broken satellite dish, the metal groaning under the pull of the mining station's weak gravity. The corridors inside were dark, lit only by emergency lights that flickered every few seconds. The air smelled like burnt wiring. Priya took point, moving low and quiet. Fatima and Elena flanked the sides. I stayed close to the back with a small scanner in my hand, watching for any sign of movement in the dust-filled hallways. We found the first survivor curled behind a fallen support beam, a young engineer too frightened to speak. Grace knelt beside him, speaking softly in a tone I had never heard from any of them before, gentle in a way that did not match her strength. Then the lights went out completely. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the sound came, a deep mechanical growl vibrating through the metal floor. Something large was moving through the station, something that had already destroyed enough to leave the place in ruins. Marshal Vren's voice cut through the comm system, steady despite the danger. "Hold formation. Do not scatter." The growling grew closer. Through the darkness, a shape emerged, a massive automated defense unit, clearly reprogrammed or damaged, moving with jerking, unnatural steps. Its sensors locked onto us instantly. Fatima fired first, but the machine absorbed the hit without slowing. Elena tried a different angle, aiming for its leg joints, but the armor was too thick. I looked at the scanner in my hand, my mind racing. The design of the machine looked familiar, similar to older mining equipment I had studied back on the supply station. If it was built on an old frame, it would have a weak point near the base of its neck, where the power core connected to the main body. I shouted the location as loud as I could, my voice shaking but clear. "The neck. Hit the neck." Priya trusted me without asking why. She moved fast, sliding beneath the machine's swinging arm, striking the exact point I had described. Sparks exploded from the joint, and the machine froze mid-motion before collapsing with a heavy metallic crash that echoed through the station. Silence returned, broken only by our own breathing. Marshal Vren stepped forward, looking down at the disabled machine, then back at me. "You knew that from a scanner reading," she said. "I studied old mining tech, back when I still had a normal job," I answered. She said nothing else, but something in her expression had changed, something that was no longer just curiosity. We found the rest of the survivors safe in a sealed section, frightened but alive. The mission ended successfully, though the walk back to our ship felt longer than the walk in, every one of us carrying the weight of what almost happened. That night, back on the ship, the mood was different, quieter, but not heavy. Priya sat beside me during the meal, closer than she had before. Fatima mentioned, almost casually, that she wanted to learn more about human technology from me directly. Elena asked if I would teach her one of my recipes. Even Grace, usually reserved, thanked me twice for noticing the injury she had been hiding. Marshal Vren found me later, standing near the same observation window where I had first realized how far from home I truly was. I called you a punishment, she said, her voice lower than usual. I was wrong. I looked at her, unsure how to respond. You are not a burden here, she continued. You have become something this unit did not expect. And now they compete for your attention in ways I did not think a human could inspire. I did not fully understand what she meant. Not completely, not yet. But I understood enough to know that whatever this journey had started as, it had become something entirely different. The stars outside the window stretched endlessly, quiet and steady, while behind me, for the first time since stepping onto that ship, I felt like I belonged somewhere I never expected to be needed. The punishment they spoke of that first day had become something else entirely, something none of us, human or Vectari, had a name for yet.